Hi, and welcome to the Bruce Channel. I'm Bruce and glad you're here. Did you remember to set your clocks ahead? This is the one that costs us the hour sleep that we get back in the fall. Now, I've never really minded either way, although I do find it a bit of a pain in the ass to have to get up at 2 a.m. and change all the clocks. All right. We've got a potpourri today. Some of it is valuable, so you might even want to grab a pen and paper along with your coffee or tea. Or is that just quaint? Just bring your smartphone, I suppose. You can use it if you want to take notes. All right, quite a potpourri, so we're going to dive right in, beginning with potpourri. Do you remember your first encounter with potpourri? Now, it's not something from my childhood, and it's not something I think about much either. But I do recall when we met. I was living in Atlanta. It was during one of my incursions into corporate America. I was a supervisor, and one of the managers was having a birthday. So all members of management were invited to her home for a birthday party. And Ellen, I don't know if you'd arrived yet, so I don't know if you would remember this. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't even go here. Well, now that wouldn't be fair to you, would it? All right. Suffice. Lots of beverages available. Several snack trays stationed here and there. There was cheese and nuts and crisp veggies like broccoli and cherry tomatoes, what you'd expect. I would just ask you to consider that potpourri, especially if one has not previously encountered it, can bear a remarkable similarity to Chex Mix, the party mix. Yeah, I did. Last week's show ran a bit long, but some of the things were of time importance. Dean Smith Memorial, the Oscars, the weather. The President's Day weekend sale was already 2 weeks old. I didn't want to delay it again. But the biggest reason it was long was because I didn't want to delay even a week, providing the opportunity, if you wish to use it, to thank Kirk Douglas. As I mentioned, he's 98. Now, he may not live a lot more years, and if he's not suffering, and if he's enjoying his life and his kids and his grandkids, I hope he does live many years more. But I didn't think that delay would be a good idea. And late last week, we were provided another reason, another inspiration for us to contemplate our limited time here. As you know, at the end of the week, last week, we lost Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock. So he'll never get a fan's thanks from us. Given that it occurred so late in the week, the best I could do was insert the Vulcan salute at the end, and even that made the original posting a few hours late. Now, likely you've read the obituaries and the tributes. He was certainly a man of far more interest than merely playing the Vulcan for a lot of money. Any science film, especially if it was about space, found him willing to donate his voice work for the narration. And he enjoyed stagecraft, acting in live theater, which he did a lot of. From the age of 13, he was an avid photographer, but I think one of the coolest things he ever did wasn't written about very much. At least I didn't see it. He starred in a one-man show, a one-act play called Vincent, the story of Vincent van Gogh and his brother Theo. Now, it was mostly through the eyes of Theo, who remains devastated at the start of the show, which begins 2 weeks after Vincent's death. Vincent himself, though, is in it, and both roles were played by Leonard Nimoy. And by the way, that is available on DVD, although it's not easy to find. I mentioned on last week's show that 3 days previously my yard caught about 5 inches of snow. And I know that another storm moved across the country this week. And spring is still about 2 weeks out. But I thought I'd offer Hershey's Kiss of sorts, at least metaphorically, although I didn't get a picture of it. Underneath that snow last week were daffodils. Not as soon as we might have hoped, but yeah, this too shall pass. I had an interesting experience this week and learned something. Although last week's show went up a bit late because I wanted to get in the Vulcan salute, the week before it went up a day late because it takes hours to upload these shows, and for a good part of the weekend I couldn't keep my cable modem up for longer than a half hour, and there's no replacing it on the weekend. So after exchanging it at the local Time Warner office, neither the phone nor internet worked. I used my cell to make a call so they could initialize. Nothing unusual there. But after she successfully got me up and working, the technician said, your signal looks a little weaker than it ought to. I'd like to send someone out to check it out. I said, fine. So he shows up first thing on the day promised, checks the signal, and he determines the problem was the drop. That's the connection from the pole to my house. But it actually drives from a pole on the other side of the street. And to run a new one, they have to get it up high from both sides of the street at the same time because you don't want it to get run over. Well, he gets on the radio, maybe it was his phone. 10 minutes later, another van and 2 bucket trucks show up. Wow, 4 or 5 guys, ladders, traffic cones, bucket trucks, all just for me. It's nice to feel wanted.
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. Or wait, I can let others do it.
Welcome back. Remember, you can write to us at the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com, and you can see all the previous shows at tinyurl.com/Bruce Channel. And I hope you'll subscribe. And the Bruce Channel now has a Facebook page. Now, it will look a little bit weird, but you can go there and like the page, and better, invite your friends to stop by, like the page, and share. You can also see all the episodes there. The Facebook page is The Bruce Channel. I told you it would look weird. Okay, pad and paper time. I wish I'd remembered to bring this to your attention sooner. It's genuinely valuable information. I'd intended to bring it up for weeks and weeks, but it's always slipped my mind. Yeah, I know I can fit in my old high school jacket, but my mind is certainly more leaky than it was back then. I first learned of this website listening to an NPR program a couple of years ago, but see, I rarely need a prescription or get a prescription, so it had very little TOMA, top of mind awareness. That's it. It's not a leaky mind, I simply had no TOMA. It's a website by the name of GoodRx.com, and it really works. All you do is put in the info about the prescription you have to fill. The dose, the form, it might be a tablet or a capsule, or I suppose even a liquid, along with your zip code. It then shows you what the pharmacies in your area will charge you. And there can be an unbelievable price differential. Plus, often one or another of the stores may offer a print-it-yourself coupon. I highly recommend using the site to see the prices before you decide which pharmacy to go to. Again, it's goodrx.com. And it is free to use. And unlike a lot of free sites all over the net, they don't even ask for your email address. But later they'll load with spam. And they are not paying me to tell you this. This is not a commercial message. It is a public service announcement. A viewer wrote in to nominate a candidate for Fans Thanks. Barbara writes that, yes, Mary Tyler Moore was a good choice, but her sidekick for several years, Valerie Harper, has been diagnosed with incurable brain cancer. What about it? Well, Valerie Harper did indeed play the character Rhoda Morgenstern, and she did a great job. So dazzling, in fact, that she got her own show. They spun her off. The show was called Rhoda. So I did some checking, and Barbara is right. Actually, Miss Harper was first diagnosed with lung cancer in 2009. In March of 2013, she announced she'd been diagnosed with meningeal cancer. The meninges are the membranes surrounding the brain. Now, there's good and bad news here. At the time she made that announcement, she said the doctors gave her 3 months to live. Well, the bad news I just gave you. But the good news is obvious. It's 2 years later, and she's still with us, and she says she's responding well to the chemo. So, okay, write to Valerie Harper at AV Productions, 11300 West Olympic Boulevard, Suite 610, Los Angeles, California, 90064. And if you're on Facebook, there is a Facebook page called Valerie Harper Fans. You might go there, give it a like, and send her a message. I'll say up front, I don't watch Dr. Oz. I don't avoid the show, but I don't regularly watch. But sometimes in the wee hours, when the previous day's show is being repeated, I'll sometimes watch if the topic seems interesting. I didn't watch this show, but I found this conversation just a bit baffling. Now, I didn't know this, but apparently it's become a trendy thing, buttered coffee. I'd never heard of it, but it seems you can flavor it with cinnamon or whatnot. But the conversation in question: a young woman loves her buttered coffee. Her mother was there with her, and she was aghast. She said she thought it sounded awful, and quoting now, "Who ever heard of such a thing?" And that's what furrowed my brow. Doesn't she, the mother, know that we get butter by churning cream? And I think lots of people have heard of putting cream in their coffee. Now, salted butter does sound terrible, but if it's unsalted, it seems to make perfect sense, no? By the time my quart cartons of cream are nearly empty, at the top there are these gobs. And those gobs are pure, fresh butter. Finally this, I mentioned that during Time Warner's visit, I learned that they can call for fast responding help that lickety-split, just like that. 2 bucket trucks were here. Well, that wasn't the only learning experience I had. On Sunday, 1 week ago, I had a different sort of learning experience. Now, for background, you should know that several times a week I'll make a smoothie. You have probably seen the infomercials and demonstrations here and there there may be some hyperbole attached, but although their claims may be hyperbolic at core, they are right. Fresh fruits and vegetables are better for you than cooked. And yes, the fiber is an essential part of the good stuff. So while I'll put in berries or an apple or orange for good flavor, I'll also include kale and carrots and sometimes beans or cabbage, asparagus, or some other greens. I've been doing this for a long time. It's not my first rodeo. And yet last week I had a eureka moment. Okay, so I had really small oranges, I used 2. I had really large apples, so I used a half. I tossed in some carrots, some blueberries, a fair amount of spinach and kale, and then I discovered that I had just a little broccoli left over from midweek. Now, it wasn't rotten, but it wasn't so crisp either, so as a side dish, it didn't have much appeal. But that's perfect for a smoothie. The fact that it lost some moisture wouldn't hurt its nutritive benefit. So, I tossed it in. And I whooped it up pretty good. Now the blueberries, as is typical, overpowered, at least in terms of color. I gave it an extra minute because the blueberries had been frozen. It tasted good. So what's the learning experience? The next time I include broccoli, or asparagus for that matter, I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to be absolutely certain. I will double check and even triple check that the the big rubber band the grocer uses to hold the stalks together isn't in the blender. Well, that's it for this week, but I hope your upcoming week is the best you've ever had.